And it's my pleasure to be able to invite up Komal, who will be able to provide a little bit more context in terms of the recent events in the earthquake response in Nepal. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here as a local risk management student, because I prefer to say I'm a student, because when you study about a risk is evolving every time. So every time you go and deal with risks, you get a new kind of risks. So I hope that will be the risk management student all over my life. Okay. And my since last 15 years, I have been doing the research on local vulnerability assessment and the humanitarian responses, particularly in Nepal. Sorry. Yeah. My research interest centered to bridge the gap between humanitarian response and the local resilience planning, including cultural security for community well-being. Today, I like to share my experience on the how I observed in the last 5 months the local leader who is involved in the cultural heritage prevention in the last 25 to 30 years in Nepal, how he plays a big role during the earthquake, and how he managed to do small changes. I'm not going to say the big changes he has done, but small changes, taking the example of the Kathamndu Valley Prevention Trust. This trust was established in 1991, and during the part of my presentation, I used the case study methods and the observation, what I did in the last 5 months. Sorry, yeah. Let me, first, I like to introduce the Nepalese vulnerability to multiple hazards, yeah? If you see this is the work I did as part of my PhD program at Northumbria University in the United Kingdom, where I collected this data from the historical archives of Nepalese newspaper. And as you know, what I did was I used that historical archives, historical news, to the numerical data, and then I used the GIS to visualize the vulnerability and the disaster history, means history of Nepal in the district level. Where what I have done in that this research is, you know, I took earthquake as a every second threat in Nepal. So it proved after the 10 years of my research that one day we are waiting for an earthquake, and now the scientists are saying, particularly the seismologists are saying that we are in the western part of Nepal, we are waiting the another one, and which is the nearly 500 years, there is a seismic gap in that part. So if you go see the total casualties per disaster reported in last 105 years, you'll see the southern part of Nepal is how vulnerable it is, and then so that it gives you some kind of planning basis for the resilience building as well as contingency planning. And these are the scenario if you want to go to the specific hazards, you know, in the context of Nepal. And now, what I go to the next one is from the 2010 to 2015, one thing is evolving right now is, I might be wrong, I'm not a seismologist, but what I see from the vulnerability side is where there is a lot of landslide has been recorded, there is a earthquake epicenter has happened to be there. So I don't know whether they have a relationship or not, but as a vulnerability researcher, there's when we put the 4 and the above Richter scale earthquake in the Nepalese map, we see that the area where there is a lot of landslide reported falls under the earthquake is also, epicenter is also falls in that area. So ground movement and the landslide might have some kind of relationship in Nepal. Let me now go back to this earthquake, which happened in the 25th of April 2015. I'm not going to share, I'm particularly interested here. What I'm doing right now is, one of the things is cascading effect of the Nepalese earthquake. And one of the major impact of the earthquake is in the cultural heritage and monument. And what does it mean to cultural heritage and monument? I'm not looking for only, impact on the structural side, but I'm also looking the impact on their livelihood, their cultural ecology, and how the Nepalese community is facing currently. So if you see this map here, or if you see this from this picture, you have a four different kind of scenario you will see. One, the lady who used to earn around 2,000 to 3,000 Nepalese rupees a day. Now she is not her whole month's income is less than the 5,000 Nepalese rupees. She is based in the near to the Swayambhunath, where it is one of the old heritage site. Because of this disaster, the number of the tourists has reduced drastically, so that her income has also gone down. So you can see the other one is we have a national museum in the Hanumandoka, where the building has been collapsed. Building has not been collapsed yet, but the inside structure has been gone so badly. In the top, you can see the the displacement is that was taken when the Kori and Alpana was there in Nepal. It was the displacement rate is going very high in every 2 months, and because the small aftershock is making the displacement wider and wider. Here you can see when there is a disaster, our heritage, means Nepalese heritage, has expressed so badly, but the people will not leave to worship. They will go to the temple. They will go to the area where they has some kind of dedication, or where they have some kind of trust. When the people are in that helpless stage, they don't bother about whether that structure is strong or not. Because if these guys who were worshipping there, right at that time, if the earthquake had happened, then they are putting their life at risk. And 2 weeks ago, we had 3 major religious ceremony happen in Nepal. So all that religious activity, where thousands of people were involved, and when these people were in that religious activity, then they were exposed to the high risk. The building was very in the difficult position, and the building was not stable. And if at that time there was a small trauma what happened, then many people would have been dead. So this kind of scenario you'll see. The other one is like the changing dynamics in child and the senior citizens care after the crisis. This in the tent where in Nepalese culture, usually the feeding the children responsibility falls to the mother, but he has lost his wife, so and he cannot cook. It means he finds it very difficult to cook food, right? So and he has to leave his job, who is only the earning person. Then he leave the job, and then he started feeding his children in the tent. The other one is the elderly couple. And the other one in the picture was these 3 girls who has lost their father and mother in the Dolkha district, in the mountain area. So they were very confused stage. And then they are finding it very difficult to cope. And in the last 3 months, there are a lot of help people or international agency has been in news. They say that they are trying to do the help, but still in the ground reality, in the far mountain area and where there is no access of the road, and where there is many people from the ethnic minority in the upper Himalaya they live, they find it very difficult to believe that the help is reaching to them. Okay, let me move back. Let me go to my observation on the particularly Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust. In this picture, what I try to show you here is, Kathmandu Valley, when the earthquake happened I'm just trying to move. When this earthquake happened in the 25th of April, the colleagues who is heading the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust was outside the Kathmandu, and that was the Saturday, so he was in the, having a family picnic. After the 5 hours of the earthquake, he arrived to the scene, and he managed to mobilize his volunteer, just to say that the importance of the, he was aware of he had documented most of the monuments and most of the temples description. So what he did was, unlike in Kathmandu, he called the meeting in the, to the local community around 6 o'clock in the night, and although the trauma was going on, and then he explained them the importance of this heritage. At that time, in the first day, they could not start any work. But according to the key informants, what they did in the second day was, in the morning 6 o'clock, they gather and they try to rescue the, the damaged objects. But when they were trying to do the damaged object, around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, another big trauma happened, which is above 6 Richter scale. So that distracted most of the volunteers' mind. So they were constantly, but however, these volunteers from the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust continue to work, and what they did was, they tried to first convince the local people and the local leadership that they should not use the bulldozer. Despite of that, on the 4th day, I think on the 29th, the Nepalese army came with 4 or 5 bulldozers to the Patan city to clear this space. So during that time, these people in the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust, they convinced the army people and say that, guys, you need to stop. It means you cannot do these kind of things here. So, and they convinced them, and as a result, you can see in the first picture, in this side here, like you have the army and the armed police and the Nepal police help in the direction of what the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust guided them. As a result, you have a different scenario between the army and between the Patan city and the Kathmandu city, which I will not like to compare it, because the initiatives taken by the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust in Patan was very different than the initiatives taken by the Department of Archaeology in Kathmandu, Darbar Square. So if some of you might know, Kathmandu has 3 cities, like Kathmandu, Patan, and the Bhaktapur. So Bhaktapur has Bhaktapur case was, I haven't studied, but when I compare to Kathmandu and this Patan case, the response mechanism was totally different in the 2 cities. So after these initiatives, what the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust did was, they try to secure the object in the safe place first, and after that, they identify the people, particularly the women and the single women and the elderly, who are as an unskilled labor. They gave them opportunity to clean the object, and they dried them, and then after during that time, they didn't wait for the governments or international support, but they used their social network, and they used their some of the well-wisher support. Within the 2-month time, or 2.5-month time, they managed to receive some funding from the Netherlands and the US Embassy in Kathmandu. So now today, this picture was taken last week. What they have done is the picture you have seen in the first one is the Rohit Ranjitkar, who is one of the very renowned architect and who is the country director of the Kathmandu Valley Trust, and he is doing they are putting the store, they are keeping the objects so that it can be used in the future reconstruction process. And in some cases, like there is a local, under the public-private partnership, I think Himalaya Bank is trying to help them. So because of the bank support, they are doing the 2 reconstruction. They have already started the 2 reconstruction site also. What I observed visiting his storage facility is, one side he is giving the employment to unskilled labor like a woman, and then to clean this stuff and giving them the opportunity and the livelihood support. But on the other hand side, the restoration of the damaged object has been already started, and then people have been employed, the skilled labor has been employed to do the work. So in this way, what you can see here is sometimes if there is a will, you can do the things, but you need a funding also. But you need to have a grounded knowledge. You need to, like Professor Liu mentioned, leadership has a quality. It means they should have a coordination, they have a networking, listen to other people. So one of the things I observed from the Kathmandu Valley Prevention Trust leadership is they are not waiting for somebody to give the money, but they are going to the different sector. They are knocking the door, and they are saying that, okay, this is the importance for the heritage site. So that the local bank and then Prince Carl's Foundation in Netherlands they were very happy to support for this process. And now the government is, and I'm not saying anything against the government, Nepalese government, they are doing the great job. However, the government is waiting for the money from the outside. Like they say that, oh, this stupa or this temple is built by this China government or Sri Lanka government or something, and they have placed the money also, respective government. But that has not been happened. But on the other hand side, if you identify the local people at the right time and the right place, then the things can happen. So what we learned from the Nepal case is the countries with a weak governance, high corruption and unstable political situation find it difficult, to understand the value and importance of cultural heritage safety and risk reduction for livelihood security and community well-being. International communities dedicated to cultural heritage safety should directly work at the local level through identifying leading local actors. Cultural heritage center risk reduction and prevention activities should be linked to the local income generation and knowledge transfer process. Here I'm seeing the knowledge transfer as a part of the skilled and unskilled labor sector also. And there is a need to integrate local cultural heritage risk reduction into formal and informal education curriculum, which has come from the previous speaker yesterday and this morning also, like informal and the formal education, we need to integrate this cultural heritage safety education. And one thing we observed when the Kori was there in Kathmandu is, like a civil-military social harmony should be maintained throughout the through the participatory simulation exercise. Because Nepalese army right now is so dedicated, they realize after this event, the cascading effect of the Nepal earthquake was the cultural side was very, 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 very hurting, and I don't know how long it will take to come to the normal stage. And then so that what the army has done right now is army has established the two special battalion to deal with the Nepalese to work for or to prepare for the next disaster or unknown. And then local authority should monitor and document the cultural heritage object which we are increasing. And the last thing is, like in the UK or in Netherlands, one of the things local authority has done, or the fire service particularly doing, is local risk register. I think we can use that model tool to do the cultural heritage risk registered also. And then Kathamndu Valley Prevention Trust has already started from the last month to do the risk register in the Patan area. On that note, what I like to say is thank you. So, Gail, yes, it.
Good afternoon. I'm Gail Joice. I'm the collections manager at the National Museum of the American Indian, and I had the honor of serving in Haiti, assisting in setting up the Cultural Recovery Center, particularly the registration systems in collaboration with my Haitian colleagues for the artwork that was coming into the lab for treatment. I myself have lived most of my life in earthquake country on the West Coast, and I've experienced the direct impact of 2 significant earthquakes on the job in museums. In 2001 at the Seattle Art Museum, we had a 6.8 earthquake while we were completely full of visitors. And then the most unexpected for someone like myself moving from the West Coast to the East Coast, a Washington, D.C. earthquake of 2011, which was a 5.8. I want to start off by thanking you, Dr. Amal, for this excellently researched and timely presentation, and also for flying 18 hours from Nepal to come give this presentation and to share it with us. Dr. Aryal's presentation underscores the importance of respecting and seeking out the local community leaders and groups who can inspire effective local first aid and cultural relief efforts. In Haiti, there were passionate individuals, or champions, as you say, who took it upon themselves to take immediate action for the protection of Haiti's patrimony, even in the first horrific days after the quake, with massive numbers of human casualties overwhelming the rescuers. There was Patrick Villers, a sculptor, local arts leader, recipient of the Order of the French Arts and Letters. He was leading technicians on his own in the first aid of trying to protect the murals of the cathedral, as you saw yesterday. Daniel Ali, an architect, director of ISPAN in Port-au-Prince, taking a spray paint can and personally marking historic buildings so that they would be noted as demolition teams came through as something to stop and not wholesale bulldoze. Of course, there were also, as Richard Karen and the panel on our Haiti recovery indicated, there were heroic efforts and at great risk to themselves, members of the public, museum, galleries, staff members, rescuing what they could from the rubble, including that very touching picture of the families rescuing their instruments from the music school. I do remember hearing Patrick telling us about a librarian who was in charge of an archives being aware that the rubble had devastated an important collection of historic books, and he took it upon himself to go through the streets of Port-au-Prince and actually did find books that had been looted already from the rubble and retrieved those and got them back for the natural patrimony. Your volunteer work for the last 5 months as an expert in disaster management, as a professor of engineering, and as a humanitarian specialist from the UK shows that you too are one of these frontline champions for your home country. Your commitment to the development of a local risk and resilience tools throughout the stricken region supports the goal that Aparna mentioned yesterday that is described from the Clinton Foundation to build it better for sustainability to meet the needs of the next earthquake, which is inevitably coming to Nepal, as you describe. Your assessment of the challenges of weak government, economic distress, and sadly, corruption has parallels in the Haiti relief efforts and in other countries. massive amounts of international aid may be siphoned off by long-standing power groups, or aid may be interminably frozen before distribution to intended recipients by endemic government dysfunction. That would be a comment that I would ask you to chime in on, is how can this type of governmental corruption be surmounted in the very critical first days of delivering funds for first aid?
Hope people from the Nepalese government are not watching this thing. Yeah. I'll give my answer as an independent scholar or student, researcher, whatever you say. But I like to share the experience. Recently, there is to be honest with you, as a researcher, people started realizing that there was a real mess in coordination in Nepalese earthquake in the last 3-4 months. So there was in exactly 398 assessment has been done by the various agencies, but none of the assessment has matched any kind of standard methodology. So realizing that need, the current head of the United Nations, Jamie, who happened to be from the UK and the Scotland, I believe, then what he realized is, okay, we need to come up with a group together and come up with some kind of joint assessment. So, but where we get the money from and where we channel the money from. But what one of the donors, I would not like to say the name, what the donor did was, instead of that donor say that, okay, we will fund that assessment, joint assessment, but we would like to fund this way. Their bracket this way means the donor channelized means funded through one of the international agency based in the Paris. That money was given to the assessment team, and now from the 16th of September up to the October 11, we are doing the first assessment in Nepal, which I saw you this morning, is like have an evidence-based assessment in the 4,200 household. So if there is a way, it means if there is a will, there is a way. And then, but we need to understand, like, you know, like what is the benefit for the country? We spend, there is just so much place of the money, but a lot of money hasn't been arrived to Nepal, people are saying. But why it doesn't arrive? Because the Nepalese government's previous track record is bad, and they don't have absorbing capacity if they receive the money. Like, so that what they are doing is, in this model can be very useful. If your government has a trusted INGO or trusted agency, they can be a partnership with local partners, and then they can use the money. That's my personal experience. Okay.
Empowering local groups to be cultural rescuers in organized salvage activities alongside military teams and other aid agencies is a model for local success, as you have demonstrated. I was particularly interested in your account of the soldiers who were being educated by the KVP leader and local residents in Patan's Durbar Square, and how they formed the cooperative to work together in salvaging the temple carvings. Those local cultural protectors effectively prevented the bulldozing of the irreplaceable. Your paper describes how the Nepalese people deeply value their sacred sites, which are living heritage, absolutely necessary to continuing daily life after a disaster. As Olsen Jean-Julien stated yesterday, the empowerment of survivors to help save their own patrimony is an essential generator of hope when most of their physical world is suddenly and utterly destroyed. Thank you for your very thoughtful presentation that honors your fellow Nepalese who are struggling with a cultural cataclysm which is still so recent and severe. You've given us a thorough report that is encouraging and inspiring for others to take leadership action at the local level within their communities. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any audience question?
Was there any training with the military before the earthquake, pursuant to like 1954 Hague, or did this come about because of this most recent earthquake?
Well, what I see is, yes, there was a training, but the training was only for the high-flying officers. Okay, like for example, when Kori went there, we went to the people, we saw the people who were working in the ground, and we were in Kori and the Alpana interacted with that people, which is a very normal phenomena. Like Nepal is not only the exception. Like when you organize the training, you go to the official channel, and who comes from the official channel are the same government officer who try to go for their DSA, who try to go for their mileage, and who is always be doing some kind of things. Either it's NGO leaders, local NGO leaders, or government officers. I don't want to say only the government officers, but there are a lot of local mafia in disaster management field in Nepal who enjoy this kind of opportunity and take this business. So yes, there was a training, but it was very unfortunate that after this disaster, and I was very pleased to meet Arpana and the Kori. Sorry. This thing happened after the earthquake. I'm sorry. But, but the time comes, as a disaster researcher, we were saying this thing, we are waiting for this thing to happen. We lost around 10,000 people. According to the Red Cross data, we have more than 12,000, but the government doesn't want to agree on that. Right? So, this is the thing, sorry.
So just a quick follow-up, Joyce, on your question about perhaps what could be done in terms of more effectively allocating resources. One of the things that I stress to our students, we have a Master's of Science program at Tulane University, around best practices. And for me, one of the top best practice is to work through local actors and work through local structures. But it's easier said than done, because in a disaster, these structures are overwhelmed. And hand in hand with working through local structure and organization is local capacity building. And as I pointed out here, we don't put a lot of resources in local capacity building, and we can't build that capacity when that disaster is occurring. So a real solution to this is that everybody for the last 20, 30 years has been quite aware that this earthquake would be occurring in Nepal. I remember when I was traveling out there on behalf of the US government, that this was on the minds of everyone. This was back in 2006. So it's not as if we weren't forecasting this. So there are many structures and local organizations that have been focused on this in Nepal. What the international community has to do is establish relationships with these local actors way before these disasters occur, so that when that time comes, we know and we can trust that these local actors will have the resources and that we can get the money to them quickly. So I think that's it. I mean, you've got to be able to work through local structures, and you've got to build this local capacity way before the event itself occurs.
Thank you. I just want to add one thing. When you say the local actor, if you see this year, many of you were in the Sendai in Japan, where the Sendai framework of action was adopted. And this year, the equivalent to Nobel Prize, Dr. Alain Lavelle, who got the Sasakawa Award, he was saying, like we need to improve. He was a champion for that. We need to improve the local capacity. We need to improve the local capacity for a long time, and particularly in the context of Nepal. Alain was, and the Andrew Muskie and Alain was raising this issue. But if we had listened, and then if we had acted in the transparent manner by the international community, I think the 9,000 people would not have been dead. Hopefully, in the Chile, so many few people died, and why 9,000 people died in Nepal? Means it's time to realize why 9,000 people died in Nepal and why only 6 or 7 people died in Chile. That needs to be revisited.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to go ahead and ask a question myself, because Part of the point of this conference has been to really try to, as one term that some of our colleagues use and Aparna uses a lot, is this idea of mainstreaming cultural heritage into other types of disaster risk response and recovery and through the cycle. And one of the challenges, though, is, okay, we've been talking a lot today about engaging local communities, that once the disaster happens is not the time you should start exchanging business cards to get to know one another. You have to establish these networks ahead of time, and you have to have a relationship between the humanitarian aid world and the cultural heritage world, et cetera. But I guess I'm going to challenge people to say, how? How do we change policy to encourage and to give hard numbers to say, here, policymakers and politicians, here's why you should do this, because you're going to save lives, and here's the scientific proof that we have gathered that shows that, you know, getting people to better prepare for disasters by getting them to think about things like saving their cultural heritage, getting them to think about all of this as a package, getting aid organizations to think about the total person and their heritage and what they care about as a package. How do we do that? Ideas? And I'm just going to hand my microphone right.
I think it is happening, because if you look at the humanitarian community over the years, early on there was this focus on short-term immediate response, where the programs were structured around providing clean water and food distribution. We've gone a long way from that. We're looking at risk reduction now. We're talking about building resilience. And we're talking about building resilience is about looking at designing programs around what makes people and communities capable. So I think it's that point where we are now, where policymakers are thinking about resilience. The challenge now is to put a little bit more definition around that and more concrete examples of what it is that makes people resilient. And I just, a quick example is I was recently in Peru. It was, my wife and I had our wedding anniversary. We went to Machu Picchu. And it was the first time we were there, and our guide, who was taking us around, said how proud his people were of Machu Picchu, and the fact that people all around the world were coming to see this. They could travel anywhere, but they were coming to Peru, and they were going to see this. And given kind of the history in terms of colonization and all of the other groups that were there, the fact that Machu Picchu exists, and it allows the people of Peru to reflect back upon their culture, their heritage, it gives them power and strength to move forward. So I think it's making that connection. I think the door is open, but we need to move quickly so that the whole resilience agenda doesn't just become everything. So if this is a priority, we need to make that connection now, and I think we are.
Barbara Roberts, I would absolutely agree. I think that having spent most of the last 25, 30 years as a conservator working in trying to get things done from the ground up, it is now time to work from the top down as well. And I would heartily support everything that Corey has tried to do with this conference. I think that the question is still valid. How are we going to do it? Where is the money going to come from? And how do we engage at the highest political levels with every government? The best way to do that is, in my view, is peer pressure. And those that are doing it well need to come forward a bit more. Those that are not doing it well need to be okay with saying, we're not doing this well, we need help. And how do we get to the right person in the right community, in the right country? I think we need very direct access. Who is the one person that you would contact in the United States to get it going? Who is the one person you talk to in Japan to get it going, to get the debate going at the highest levels? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. If you haven't got the right contact at the right time, in time, you're in trouble.
At the risk of repeating myself, I had my say yesterday, But I would like to again think that, just as what you said, Ki, is that there are very good examples within the humanitarian field on community-based risk management has come of age in the humanitarian field. I'm not saying that they are perfect, they have their issues, but in Caribbean they have trained leaders. Red Cross has had a very successful program where they have trained leaders to look at reduced risk of health epidemics or something like that breaking out. And we can learn from such models. Why do we have to reinvent everything? And also the other aspect that I would like to say is that why can't we merge workflows? Why can't we do joint programming? Because it's a cross-cutting issue. And how long can we be on periphery? In Nepal, there are Guthiers. The Guthis are, this is the community-based organizations. They have been weakened by the land reforms, and there is a lot of politics to wade through. But communities are not benign, entities. They have their own politics, and as Terry was saying, power systems. We have to be aware and work with that. The other point that I want to make is that even if the government is corrupt, we cannot bypass the governments. Because look at what happened in Afghanistan. You bypass government, you create an NGO culture, and that becomes totally donor-driven. That is also not a solution either. So local capacity building has to come both ways. You have to have NGOs, you have to have, it's not going to be solved in a day, but really that means, as has been pointed out, long-term programming, not short-term goals. And there are some short-term things, but we need to, we have to think of everything in a development framework after a big major social disruption.
Yeah. Can I just, sorry, one thing, Professor Liu. What happened is, after the Sendai Framework of Action conference last March in Japan, there is a 20 member of parliament from the Nepalese parliament has come together. And now it was just 2 months, nearly a month ago, the earthquake, they have formed the National Campaign for Disaster Risk Reduction. Their main objective is to use, to advise the government, or to, by the end of the day, when you introduce the policy and program and law, Parliament should have to approve it. So what they have done right now is there is a dedicated member of Parliament. They have under the State Affairs Committee. They are from the National Campaign for Disaster Reduction Nepal, and this is a multi-party parliamentarians group, which is now going through every month, first Saturday of every month, they organize the evidence-based learning. Like 2-3 weeks ago, they organized the event with the support of the Sheffield University in the UK on the health issue, and the last Saturday they organized the program on the Disaster Management Act and the Reconstruction Authority Bill. So these are the new actors. Sometimes these parliaments are going to be ministers tomorrow. Right. So that was not done before, and now it is our own homegrown initiatives. These parliaments are doing the things. Just to share, yeah.
Well, I understand when the event happened, there are a lot of foreign aid tried to help Nepal, but one of the biggest problem was airstrip. Was it? The Kathamndu airport had only one airstrip.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are so many foreign airplanes tried to fly in, but they denied the landing because it's so jammed up. And I think the U.S. started helping by bringing a supply by helicopter, but actually there is no designated area to land in, so knock down some of the houses and problem like that happened. So I was wondering, remote area like that, they put in the disaster planning for certain like a landing strip for helicopter or point of distribution, those kind of things they are including in the disaster plan or not?
Let me put, I don't want to comment on the Kathmandu-based logistic, but what I saw in the village is, during the first 2 months, or first 3 weeks after the 12th May earthquake, the helicopter which were rescuing the people or tried to rescue the people, the body of the helicopter was big, in the terrain where there was no landing zone. Nepal Army had done some mapping, but they could not map in the high hill area. So when the helicopter went, they could not land in the right place. So it was very difficult to, for the logistic purpose to land. And then now there is initiatives has been started to create the, like a landing site or the mapping the landing zone or the open space in the various part of Nepal, which is particularly affected by the earthquake, which is 53 district of the earthquake, means Nepal out of 75. They are trying to map which area could be better, because there are two kind of helicopter. One is like a big one, which like the WFP use, yeah. And so initial phase, when the big helicopter arrived to Kathmandu with a relief material, that was for them it was very difficult to go to the remote area, yeah. But regarding other landing issues, I'm not. I might not be the right person to comment on that.
Hello. My name is Eric Gentry. I'm with the Smithsonian, the Associate Director of Emergency Management. Just a quick for the group. I'm recent. I'm the new guy in the Smithsonian since July. But to answer some of the questions about do these things exist, for example, there's a thing called EMAC here in the United States, the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, that every state is a signatory member as well as U.S. territory. For example, in South Carolina, I just got an email, little press release from EMAC that's done through the National Emergency Management Association. They have 7 states that are in South Carolina with teams from those other states working. Again, these are local people that, because their state is signatory to this Emergency Management Compact, they can cut the red tape, go in and assist. I worked for FEMA for many years. I worked at state and local level. And you're exactly right, it begins at the local level. But I do want this group to understand, at least in the United States, I mean, yes, we have Katrinas and we have our large events, but if you look at those in the context of what those would be in many places around the world, we tend to be very uncomfortable after disasters, whereas in other places we would be trying to stay alive. If you look at the amount of water that people were able to move in, drinking water, excuse me, they have plenty of water in South Carolina. So I just want to kind of point out that for this group, just a suggestion, rather than look at building, other pathways, especially I can only speak in the United States, the one thing we need to remember is there already in the emergency management community many ways to access and get in the kind of things you're trying to do. And I kind of shudder to think that at least in the United States, we build a separate pathway. We need to utilize and be a part of the ones that are there and build upon those because they are collective. And to use Craig Fugate's, I actually worked with Craig in Florida to use his term, the whole of community. And if you listen to the message he puts out, he talks about the whole of community, trying to get communities to recover. So again, just a thing that a lot of things you're bringing up are great points. We're kind of bouncing between humanitarian aid and disaster relief and then the cultural heritage part. So again, being the new guy, it's kind of hard for me to bounce around and follow, but I just want to kind of point out there are a lot of things in place that have come about. In fact, EMAC is relatively new, Emergency Management Assistance Compact. You can look it up online. But it's been in place since really after Hurricane Andrew, and it gets better every year. And it takes all the legalities that normally slow big government, state and local, it takes those out of the way. Quick example, putting a paramedic in a helicopter from National Guard from Georgia working a flight mission in Florida. All that's worked out by this agreement. In many ways, it might be able to do some of the things you're looking for as well, at least at the state and local level for some of that. Thank you.
One idea, as I was just listening to this, about how do we elevate and prioritize this issue around emergency management response. Within the U.S. and other countries, we always look at our critical infrastructure and what's essential in terms of in that emergency phase, as well as what do we need to be able to stand up quickly to promote early recovery. And it seems to me that if we can elevate as part of our critical infrastructure in each country to be able to add to that discussion, one of the critical infrastructure here would be our culture and our heritage. So just as much as we preserve water and electricity and transportation, if that is a sector that is put into policy, that's going to trigger all of these management systems that we're talking about. So it's working within the system, but now to elevate and prioritize that, that might be something that we could just focus on and get our legislation and policymakers to really make a difference.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much.